Welcome to CVR News English. Let's watch the world news. U.S. President Donald Trump has called on Israel to immediately stop bombing. The Gaza Strip following the Hamas partial acceptance of his proposed peace plan. Hamas announced its willingness to release all remaining hostages from the October 2023 attack and enter negotiations based on Trump's 20-point blueprint. The plan includes an immediate ceasefire, Israeli military withdrawal, and the establishment of the transitional Palestinian government.
Donald Trump has ordered Israel to stop bombing the Gaza Strip after Hamas said it had accepted some elements of his plan to end the conflict and return all the remaining hostages taken in the October 2023 attack. There was no immediate response from Israel, and senior Hamas officials suggested there were still major disagreements that required further negotiations. The Hamas response fell short of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's demands that the group surrender and disarm. Israel had earlier accepted Trump's plan in its entirety. The latest ceasefire effort is being welcomed internationally. Key mediators Egypt and Qatar welcomed the latest developments. French President Emmanuel Macron expressed optimism, writing on social media that, quote, the release of all hostages and a ceasefire in Gaza are within. U.S. President ordered Israel to stop bombing the Gaza Strip after Hamas.
The leaders, Senator Takachi media, after winning the party's leadership election, outlining her key priorities. She pledged to focus on economic recovery, national security, and restoring public trust in government. Takachi, they have emphasized the expansionary fiscal policies, stricter immigration controls and investment in advanced technologies like nuclear fusion. She also signaled a tough stance and defense and foreign policy, including the close ties with Taiwan and political trade recognition, and Japan's first female prime minister inviting. She vowed the rival LDP and unify the party amid declining public support. And parliamentary vote to confirm her as Prime Minister is expected by mid-October, marking a historic shift in Japanese policies.
Takaichi got 185 votes against 156 votes for Koizumi in the runoff. The winner will almost certainly be approved by the parliament as Japan's fifth prime minister in as many years. Once formally elected, the 64-year-old Takaichi would be Japan's first woman premier.
Together with so many of you, we have truly marked a new era for the Liberal Democratic Party. Thank you very much.
Now, she would face a host of complex issues, including an aging population, geopolitical upheaval, a faltering economy, and growing unease about immigration. First, however, they will have to ensure that the LDP, which has governed almost non-stop since 1955, can rally voters again. Outgoing Premier Shigeru Ishiba took the reins last year, but his LDP-led coalition lost its majority in both houses of parliament, and he threw in the towel. She is one of the most conservative members of the male-dominated party. Now, on the economy, Takaichi has in the past backed aggressive monetary easing and big fiscal spending, echoing her mentor, former Premier Shinzo Abe. But she tempered her stance on the campaign trail. Takaichi, known as a China hawk, has also sounded more moderate in her views on Beijing on the campaign trail.
Hamas submitted in response to the President Donald Trump's Gaza peace plan, expressing readiness to release all hostages living dead as part of the proposed exchange. The group said it aims to end Israel's war on Gaza and supports the complete withdrawal of Israeli forces. In a statement shared via Telegram, Hamas affirmed its willingness to enter immediate negotiations through the mediators. It also agreed to hand over Gaza's administration to an independent body of Palestinian technologies, backed by national consensus and Arab Islamic support. While Hamas accepted key elements of the plan, it did not commit to disarmament. Trump welcomed the move and urged Israel to halt bombing to facilitate hostages release and peace talks.
Said the plan presented the best chance for peace in the conflict and that Germany fully supports Trump's call upon both sides. Meanwhile, Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi welcomed the progress in the Gaza peace process. In a social media post where he also tagged the US President, Prime Minister Modi hailed Trump's leadership as peace efforts in Gaza make decisive progress. He also said that indications of the release of hostages mark a significant step forward. The chorus of hopeful European reactions to Hamas's response. Now, Macron previously said that if US President Donald Trump really wants to win the Nobel Peace Prize, he needs to stop the war in Gaza.
The United Nations has strongly criticized the Israeli military after grenades were dropped near UN peacemakers in the southern Lebanon's Maram al-Ras, according to the United Nations interim force in Lebanon. The incident occurred while peacemakers were working alongside Lebanon's soldiers to secure civilian workers, clearing the rubble from war-damaged homes. A series of explosions occurred, including one just 30 meters above a UNFIL personnel following the drone overflights. Fortunately, no injuries were reported, but the UN labeled the incident as a serious violation of the UN Security Council Resolution 1701, which and mandates a cessation of the hostility and the protection of peacekeeping operations. The UN has urged Israel to cease attacks near the peacekeepers' civilians. And Lebanon's soldiers and wall of the fell to the march out its mandate as tasked without obstruction.
UNIFIL tell us that Israeli Defense Forces dropped grenades near UN peacekeepers who were working alongside Lebanese soldiers in an operation to provide security for civilian workers in Marun as-Ras. The workers were trying to clear the ruins of homes destroyed during the conflict. In the morning, peacekeepers at two different sites heard grenade explode about 500 meters away from them. Moments later, one group saw a drone fly overhead and witnessed an explosion about 30-40 meters away. About 20 minutes after that, the second group saw another drone drop a grenade that exploded just 20 meters over their heads. It goes without saying, but the IDF had been informed about our activities in advance. And our peacekeeping colleagues obviously immediately contacted the IDF and demanded the firing stop. Fortunately, our colleagues at UNIFIL tell us that Israeli Defense Forces dropped grenades near.
Voting resumed in Parkyo against the Czech Republic on Saturday for the second and final day of the country's parliamentary elections. The outcome could significantly shift the nation's foreign policy, particularly its support for Ukraine. Former Prime Minister and published billionaire Andrej Babis, leader of the NENVO party, is the fortuner aiming to reclaim power from the pro-Western coalition led by the current Prime Minister Peter Fiala. Babis has campaigned on isolating military and aid to Ukraine and aligning them more closely with Hungary and Slovakia, both of which maintain ties with Moscow. The poll suggests that he could secure around 30% of the vote, but may still need coalition partners to form a government. House Speaker Mike Johnson has blamed Senate Democrats and Minority Leader Chuck Schumer for the ongoing government shutdown, calling their actions terribly selfish. Johnson claimed Democrats dictated clean or continuing the resolution of proposed by Republicans 3 times instead, pushing a partisan spending bill. He argued the GOP's version aimed to save $185 billion by removing ineligible Medicaid receptionists and buying time for negotiations. Johnson criticized the Democratic bill for reversing Trump-era Medicaid reforms and administratively spending. He accused Democrats of inflicting unnecessary hardship on Americans for political gain, saying they prioritized appeasing their far left base over responsible governance. The shutdown continues as both sides remain locked in a bitter fiscal standoff.
They'll have a chance to think about it, and maybe some of these conversations start to result in something to where we can start moving some votes and actually get.
Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome to day 3 of the Democrat shutdown. All around the country right now, real pain is being endured by real people because the Democrats have decided to play politics. We have more reforms coming to try to fix Obamacare, which is not working for the people. But you need common sense, responsible Republicans who are serious about policy to fix that for the people, and that's what we're working to do. The Democrats are stalling that because they need a political talking point. And why? Because Chuck Schumer, who leads the Democrats, is terrified that he's not going to win back his Senate seat.
We can't make commitments or promises on the COVID subsidies because that's not something that we can guarantee that there are the votes there to do. But what I've said is I'm open to having conversations with our Democrat colleagues about how to address that issue. And I think that but that can't happen while the government is shut down. I mean, we've got to open up the government. And with respect to our schedule, like I said, I don't know how many times you're going to give them a chance to vote no. And hopefully over the weekend, they'll have a chance to think about it. And maybe some of these conversations start to result in something to where we can start moving some votes.
The U.S. Senate failed to pass a Republican blanket bill aimed at ending the government shutdown, with the vote falling short of the 60 needed to overcome a filibuster. The rally stood at 54 to 44, marking the fourth failed attempt to advance funding legislation. Democrats held firm, demanding that any resolution including extensions of the healthcare subsidies under the Affordable Care Act, while Republicans insisted on reopening the government first before negotiating the policy conversations. Senate Majority Leader John Tooney expressed frustration, saying if Democrats were blocking a clean continuing resolution. Meanwhile, House Speaker Mike Johnson announced the House would suspend legislative business next week, pursuing the Senate to act. With no further votes scheduled for the weekend, the shutdown is expected to continue into next week.
Is it the sense of the Senate that debate on the motion to proceed to H.R. 5371, an act making continuing appropriations and extensions for fiscal year 2026 and for other purposes shall be brought to a close upon reconsideration. The yeas and nays are mandatory under the rule. The clerk will call the roll.
Mrs. Murray, Mr. Ossoff, Mr. Schiff, Mr. Schmidt, Mr. Schumer, Mr. Scott of Florida, Mr. Scott of South Carolina.
The yeas are 54 and the nays are 44. 3/5 of the Senate duly chosen and sworn not having voted in the affirmative. The motion upon reconsideration is not agreed to.
Mr. President.
The question is it the sense of the Senate that debate on the motion to proceed to H.R. 5371, an act making continuing appropriations and extensions for fiscal year 2026 and for other purposes shall be brought to a close upon reconsideration. The yeas and nays are mandatory under the rule. The clerk will call the roll.
Mrs. Murray, Mr. Ossoff, Mr. Schiff, Mr. Schmidt, Mr. Schumer, Mr. Scott of Florida, Mr. Scott of South Carolina.
The yeas are 54 and the nays are 44. 3/5 of the Senate duly chosen and sworn not having voted in the affirmative. The motion upon reconsideration is not agreed to.
Mr. President.
The question is it the sense of the Senate that debate on the motion to proceed to H.R. 5371, an act making continuing appropriations and extensions?
Protesters in Israeli blocked military convoys en route to Gaza, demanding that the government allows the global Sumud flotilla to enter the Beside Gate enclave. The demonstrators, including activists in law, a green tag guitar, expressed solidarity with the flotilla and its detained participants, calling for an end to the Israeli blockade. Security forces cleared the protesters to the allowed movement. But the incident highlighted the growing domestic and international opposition to Israel's handling of the aid flotilla. The flotilla, comprising over 40 vessels and 400 activists, including the politicians and humanitarian workers, was intercepted by the Israeli Navy. The interceptions sparked global protesters, with rallies erupting across Europe, Latin America, and Asia, condemning Israel's actions and urging governments to take diplomatic measures.
Occupation prison. A government that has been systematically trying to eradicate, starve, and dilute the Palestinians' hope that there is action. My full solidarity is with the Sumud flotilla and the arrestees right now in the occupation prison. A government that has been systematically trying to eradicate, starve, and dilute the Palestinians' hope that there is action. My full solidarity is with the Sumut flotilla and the arrestees right now in the occupation prison. A government that has been systematically trying to eradicate, starve, and dilute the Palestinians' hope that there is action. My full solidarity is with the Sumut flotilla and the arrestees right now in the occupation prison. A government that has been systematically trying to eradicate, starve, and dilute the Palestinians' hope that there is action.
During Homeland Secretary Christie Noyam's visit to the U.S. Immigration and Cautious Enforcement ICE facility in Broadview, millions of federal agents detained. Multiple protesters gathered outside. The demonstration was part of a growing backlash against the intensified immigration enforcement under President Trump's administration. Protesters attempted to block vehicles across the ground, voiced concerns over the treatment of detainees and the use of barricades that restricted their movement. Law enforcement, including Illinois State Police and Cook County Sheriff's officers, responded with heightened security, closing nearby streets and erecting concrete barriers. Some protesters were arrested on charges such as obstruction and aggravated battery to officers.
I think the thing that has changed this protest specifically today is the inclusion of the state police, frankly.
I have a right. Do something about it.
And as the day went on, we were progressively pushed, not just by ICE, but also by Broadview Police Department. We've done these things peacefully. We have done our due diligence to make sure that we are in accordance with the laws.
You can see it right here. They have a fixed gun on the roof right now, aiming at protesters. This is one-sided violence, one-sided escalation that began with mass secret police coming into our community and disappearing our neighbors.
It's an American issue. This has been happening for our entire history. And people need to realize that it's not just about fighting against Trump, it's fighting for a more humane immigration system that we all deserve. I think the thing that has changed this protest specifically today is the inclusion of the state police, frankly.
I have a right.
Deputy Prime Minister David Lammy presented the visit in Manchester for victims of the Yom Kippur synagogue terror attack has addressed mourners near the Heaton Park Hebrew congregation's company. Lammy was met with a shot of shame on you. Go to Palestine and you have blood on your hands from sections of the crowd. The Blackish statement about the Labour government's declaration of a Palestinian state and perceived reaction against rising anti-Semitism. Protesters accused the government of enabling extremism and failing to protect the Jewish communities. Lammy paused multiple times during his speech, urging unity and resilience, demanded concrete action for political platitudes.
Please, we know how we all feel. We know how we all feel.
That is why we stand in defiance of those terrorists who seek to divide us, who want to pit neighbour against neighbour, to weaken the bonds that bind us together as one nation, one people, one united kingdom.
Please, let the Deputy Prime Minister speak, please. Please.
We cannot, we must not let them divide us. We must show them who we really are, not what they want us to become or to believe, but Britain's true nature, a tolerant nation.
You have blood in your hands! They call for our death in the bar!
Please. We know how we all feel. We know how we all feel.
That is why we stand in defiance of those terror.
At least 12 civilians have died and over 200 died and over 200 were injured in violent protesters across the Pakistani occupied Kashmir as clashes erupted between the demonstrators and security forces. The unrest, led by the Awami Action Committee, stems from demands for food and electricity subsidies and actually fund the abolition of refugee assembly seats. Security forces reportedly opened fire in Muzaffarabad, Derkot and Dadial, promoting widespread shutdowns and communication blackouts. Thousands of troops have been deployed to restore order. Activists are urging UN intervention, warning of humanitarian crisis. The protests reflect the deep frustration over economic neglect and lack of economic, with inflation soaring and basic services deteriorating across the region. Tensions remain high as demonstrations continue.
The demonstrators, led by the Jammu and Kashmir Joint Awami Action Committee, are demanding structural reforms, economic justice and an end to elite privileges. Key demands include abolishing 12 assembly seats reserved for Kashmiri refugees living in Pakistan, tax relief and subsidies on essential goods like flour and electricity. The security forces opened fire on protesters, resulting in several deaths of civilians. India has strongly condemned Pakistan's actions in POK, calling for accountability for horrific human rights violations. India's Ministry of External Affairs spokesperson Ranveer Jaiswal has stated that the unrest is a natural consequence of Pakistan's oppressive approach and systemic plundering of resources. Meanwhile, Pakistan Minister Dr. Tariq Fazal Chaudhry has claimed that negotiations between the government and Jammu and Kashmir Joint Awami Action Committee have been successful.
The U.S. Secretary weighing a proposal to issue a $1 coin featuring President Donald Trump to commemorate the 250th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence in 2026. The initiative stems from 2020, a law signed by Trump authorizing commemorative coins for the semi-quintessential top traditions reportedly include a Trump's profile, with patriotic inscriptions of imaginary references to his survival of 2024 assassination attempt. The coin would symbolize resilience and national pride. According to officials, critics argue that featuring a living president on currency breaks tradition and politicizes the milestone, and Treasury has here to finalize the design and public input may influence the decision. If approved, the coin would be released as part of a broader commemorative series.
Centennial. In 1976, bicentennial coin was chosen through a national competition. It featured the Liberty Bell and the moon on one side, symbolizing American independence and achievement. The other side featured former President Dwight D. Eisenhower, the first president to appear on a $1 coin in 1971. When asked whether Trump had seen the draft coin design, White House spokesperson Caroline Leavitt said that she is not sure, but added that she is confident the president would love it. The design was shared yesterday and shows Trump with a raised, clenched fist on one side.
That's the wrap of the Devotional News. Keep watching CVR News.
This is Dr. Shantan Pal